My VIP cohort, ready to lend an ear. We are going to talk about something organizational and not organization, more or less getting yourself on the right track. And for a while now, I've been doing a lot of websites, and you'll see where this is going. You need to make sure that you have a password manager and something that you can keep all the sites that you get. One big issue that I started encountering, and I was just processing in my head, is that if someone came to me and said, hey, I want to buy your business, I want to do a mergers and acquisition, and I had all these sites that I use, and I have no means of one spot where I can get all the passwords to get them logged in and then give them the authorities, and we have to go in all manually. That is a nightmare. And then it keeps me disorganized from what I need to do. And then I need to have files backed up with how my GitHub and Claude work, so then they can use that code base and my infrastructure to have a full range of how to make it work. Because my business is solo alongside Claude. That's my main go-to. I'm still learning at this time Hermes and NOS research while trying to keep everything bootstrapped. That's the big regard. But at some point, you got to look at the bootstrapping and make sure that you add the right amount of funds. Right amount of funds so you can execute on the processes you want to do. Example, if you want to do a Google Ads, but you have $0, that's the worst type of scenario. Now, in the beginning, yes, it's going to be stages and you want to see the market. But when you contribute the funds into like Google Ads and then it starts pushing out in that direction, then you're starting to get there. And then you also have AOE, pretty much the AI search engine pulling up your content in the right light. That's probably going to shift away from SEO, search engine optimization. Because when you put it in the AI, you want to have more of a narrow margin of what you're looking at. Without further ado, let's come back to it. The password manager. The password manager I use right now is Bitwarden. And I'm going to switch my camera screen to here. And pretty much, I ain't going to log in at this time, but they offer a free account, and you can just go right on in, put it right through. A lot of big companies are using it, but all you have to do is just use the free plan, get in there, put the passwords in there, and just use it for that purpose. You can get all the other cool perks in there and just have it in one base, and that's a decision that you can make. But my main thing that I want to really highlight with y'all is just make sure that you have something of this. And I'm not sponsored by Bitwarden in the slightest. This is just the one I decided at this point. And yes. So go in there, log in, start putting those passwords that you have, your Google accounts, and then also figure out how your two-factor authorization is going to go as well. You want to understand how you can keep those aligned. In the event, let's say your phone crashes, kaputs, and all of the stuff that you have on there is the only means of getting there. You need to have a backup, have a redundancy to fetch it on your laptop or a server with passwords and so forth. Doing it all by yourself is a large ordeal. It is worth it because you are now understanding the whole ecosystem. And the ecosystem is like seeing the whole wide range. But when you need to focus in on that one thing, you're going to have to delegate it. And having the understanding of how it's supposed to be structured and then navigate people through there in the beginning parts and then let them do that. And then you focus on the building aspect. You're going to have a very better experience. So what other things should you have? If you have your password manager, what would be the other part? Making sure your cybersecurity is pretty well out. In the regards, making sure that you have firewalls up, which is already a given with Windows, having a VPN. I use Surfshark, not sponsored once again, but to have my own paid VPN service that can pretty much handle more of a loading. I also use Proton at times too with it's free. And then for emails, I keep Gmail just for like basic stuff, and it has a lot of connectivity with the MCPs. Yet if I need like my business email, I build it out on Zoho just to keep it cheaper and easier, and one spot for that. And then the one that I keep that's just private to me is Proton Mail. And the reason for that being, it's very secure. So keep those in mind when you're building out your email providers. And then for having a business phone number, Google Voice. That's what I use at this time. But you can go to your phone providers or Cisco and get a business line there. I use Google Voice just because at this time, it's best to just have that synced off to the phone number that you already have, and then just build out that way. But when the the level of demand requires more phone coverage and so forth, probably want to look at Cisco and so forth. So yes. And then all this is tying together with a password manager, with your VPNs, with all this other stuff. Making sure you have your tools and organizing it so it's easier to recover files that are necessary to you easily. Having a place to look over things, so if you have a day where you're forgetting stuff, you can just remember the one important thing into the password manager and fetch all the others, so you're not confused. Then going back over, you want to use your Claude or yourself and get like Malwarebytes or the Claude itself, go in and start running cybersecurity scans. I am not a cybersecurity analyst, and you're going to hear this all through. I use Claude heavily, but you want to have this frame of thought where it goes off and starts running and making sure things are safe. If you're not thinking in those type of regards, something bad can happen. You always want to keep building automatizations that help with that. And the thing that I like about Claude is that it has routines and schedules already built into its environment once you build out on the desktop version. You can put it on VS Code as well. All this being said, you can use NAN as well. Make sure your cyber presence is secure. Then you can go on, have I been pewed as well? See, is your email in a vulnerability? Check that on good occasions, or ask the Claude. Hey, here's this email. Bam. And then you got that. The markdown files are like the key to your success. And I say this because they have more of the instructions needed to go after things. Now, one thing that's been really hard for me to do at this time is deleting the Claude MD file. But Boris, the guy who made Claude Code, says you should get rid of that every 6 months and allow the model to just do its thing, and then start adding back things where it's having trouble. And in that regard, if the man who's making the whole great ecosystem on there says, hey, get rid of that and just start a fresh one, I backed up mine just so if things start acting up, I can just say, hey, go back to my previous version of my Claude MD and put this in there. And then you can just rinse and repeat that. If the next one comes, just say, hey, my previous version, fetch this, boom. And then it's more efficient that way because you're not having all this old code that doesn't do anything or a lot of fluff and keeping it very narrowed and to the point. And that's pretty much what I'm looking at in that regard for organization and documents. A great update that I'm going to add on from this password manager that I just wanted to shout out to is that I finished my secondary book. That's going to combine together. And it's going to be based on leadership. I'm going to pretty much get it transcribed to my doc file, combine them together, and it's going to be one. I'm going to try to make it a masterpiece. That's my biggest thing about it. I want it to be the thing that you can use before going into sales, marketing, lawyer, accounting, and so forth, and have the success, even drop shipping. affiliate marketing, because it's going to go to the fundamental principles that are required, and then you can go scale off into the side directions that enhance what it does overall. And then I'm going to look at future-wise of creating opportunities, whether you failed or you win, to always be in a position where you can be winning. Because environments are sticky in that regard. If you're around winners, you're going to become the next winner. If you're not and you're stuck, you're going to be stuck for a long period of time. The only way to get unstuck is making those consistent moves. And being okay with the process. And one thing that I've went heavily into, your ego and your envy are like the two main things that you're going to have to face. And if you say that you don't have it, I believe it's a full of crap. The only way that I've figured out to like face these parts of ourselves is ego must be faced with edification. And edification goes into the regard of speaking of another in a higher light. Not so much about me, but of another. Giving highlight here, there. Because I am just one person. I can give you a great ember that can ignite the fire, yet there needs to be the kindling and all the other stuff that tends to it. So it's not just one, it's many coming together to make this possible. And for envy, because ego's edification and we're enhancing. Envy, you have to be enormous. The thing that you'll get, maybe you get older and you see a 20-year-old making their first mill off drop shipping, and it kind of makes you feel some type of way. That they're getting their wins early and so forth. The way you have to look at it in a lens, forget your age for a second here, is that great. If I create an offer, it's enormous because now they have capital. And then if I present something that they like, they can invest in me, and then we have that. Don't like using it often, but the win-win. Because I'm not one for fairness, but I do think in the regards of if someone has capital and they've done the work and they're making it happen, there is no reason whatsoever I should be complaining on that. And the reason for that is they're winning. All too often, and I've made a video prior of like, you got to support people. There's two things that I've looked at. Watching and supporting. And there's a big difference. Watching is good to see how a market treads. Yet if there's people in there that you care about deeply, you got to support them. And it comes down to figuring out where to let them fail and when to come in. Where you see the lessons being partaken. It's a blender. There is no right part of the journey. And this is where I want to break away from the hero's journey and call it like the esoteric journey. Our esoteric journey is something uniquely to us. Stop playing by the same mantra. Why not make something that's uniquely yours? Stop falling into the things that just seem generic and make something that's yours. All too often we get the same type of, dare we say, crap. Because it just keeps getting regurgitated, trying to get that connection, that hook, and all that. Rather than, how do we connect deeply to somebody so they know that they're not in a place where they're just failing constantly. Where the value that's being exchanged is actually enhancing. And where they're getting leads. And I probably need to add that into one of my chapters as well. Leads, leads, leads. It's not how much money you have, it's how much leads you have. If your pipeline is full, let's say you have someone that's really not fun to deal with. You can fire them because you got more leads to come in. Same thing with family, same thing with anybody. If somebody is not supporting you on this journey and they're just watching and nitpicking and all this type of stuff, why? Look, you can be tolerant and create your boundaries. Why let them invade the boundary? As I started in the beginning of this video, the password managers, the ways of keeping everything together and organized. so you can have a merger, acquisition, future thinking, the esoteric journey, the books that you write, the things that you want to go after. It's something that must be done. But we cannot blame those that go into the journey with the wrong playbook and start failing miserably. You have to create something that solidifies a win. Leadership, I had to argue, is results. There's no other way of looking at it. The people that we listen to have the results, and we listen to it because that's the authority. At some regard, it's not that they just have money, but money is a contributor into the way that the results come off. Because then you can acquire resources and be in a state of mind where you can think and implement better ideas of planning and thinking. And that's where I came to another great thing within this book. Planning and thinking. I know they say that plans are bullshit. The reason is that a plan can't always go the same direction. It has to be, tactically speaking, maneuverability. No things are just going to go as a book. There's going to be shifting, and you have to adapt to that shift, of course. Yet the best example I've seen in planning is actually Claude. When you go to the planning mode, firstly, when you give it this whole thing, it's going to go off and just start going down, taking everything and give you a transcript of what it's planning to do. It's not exact, but it gives you the outline of what it's going to do. That you can look over and see, okay, these are going to be areas of concern. Let's amend these so there's no hiccups later. Then you execute, let the model do its thing. You direct it. If you see things that are not looking right, you can pause it, say, hey, this is what I'm seeing, and then go from there. Or let it just do auto and then go back over if you see the problems. Don't think about the Claude so much, but how the process of planning happened there. That was a masterclass just by watching. And I would say to Henry Ford, when he was like young and he was tinkering on watches and so forth, the watches were pretty much his books. The same way a coder making the code and building the project is that. Sometimes we don't have to use a book list to judge people fully. We have to see their whole way of thinking and what they align with. Maybe someone's only read 50 books in their lives, but they code so much that they've only used those 50 because those they study deeply. Does that mean that I stop listening to them? No, I actually listen more deeply because they studied so focused on a few things. And that's where we need to look at. If you stay focused on a few main things rather than the many, dabbling in many has its perks. You have a greater overview. But when you get focused on that one thing, it's powerful for getting the results you need. There is no other way to put it. And if the results are coordinated with creating, results solidify. And that's how I'd be. So I'm going to wrap this up to my VIP cohort and become the VIP you're meant to be. Don't let nitpickers stop you from doing what you need on the journey. Make sure you organize your sites. Make sure you have your cybersecurity stuff going. And don't take it for granted. Always keep thinking what can be added, what can be built inside, and make it easier for yourself. I was about to give up at one point with automation altogether. I was sitting on NAN and I was just like about to blow. I was like, I can't keep doing this. I'm sitting here HTTPS requests and all this, and then the JSON, and I was just like, how do I do this crap, man? And I was trying to get the open source version into HostStringer so that I could run it off there and then connect off to these things and then build out the flows. And I was just like, crap, this is going to take years. Then I started going on YouTube and I started seeing Dan Martell on how the Claude can do the autonomous automation. And then I started seeing other videos where they were doing SSH with the Claude into the NAN workflow. And then it just started creating the flows. And I was just like, whoa. And then that's when I had the total shift. And then I went deep into that and started to understand how that worked. And it gave me so much relief. Because I was always studying AI, but I was never using it to create a system. And then once that system came along, then I started studying the systems backwards with Notebook LM. And this is all just to say, the large language models hold a lot of potential and a lot of calamity. There's both sides of the spectrum. But we fear what we don't have competence in, and also what we do not show warmth in. If we do not treat others as humans and we just think of them as just tools, it doesn't end well. There is parts where you must make a necessary decision, and I'm not going to avoid that. But if you only think they're tools, it's a, how would you put it? It's not a great end. Yeah, you have to be able to shift. And that's where, by me shifting and understanding these things, it kept me going. When I read over to 600 books, I crashed. I was on Will and Ariel Durant's Story of Civilization, book 5, and I legit couldn't see the words any longer. I pushed myself for a whole year and a half. I was just popping book after book after book, 1 a day, 2, 3, sometimes 4. Weekends, I would probably take like 1 day off and then just go back in harder. And I just went again and again and again. I hit that and I said, what can I do to shift myself from all books to this? I'm a big believer on infographics. And the reason why is pictures and words together can tell a greater story. But then there's some things that you can't use pictures and words to tell the entire story. Think of it, if I read the dictionary, I have now all the word repertoire that I've just enunciated in my head. Now I can take the book that is like the cheat sheet that allows it to click. Both are very important. One takes a lot of work. The other is just being smart of how to implement. So do the reps, be consistent, and if possible, get obsessed in that one part of the area. Stay consistent in other habits of your life, but if you have to figure out that one thing that you need to obsess in, just go hard into there. Allow breathing room to think, because I think we get falling into love with like the grinding period, and that's a wrong mentality. Grinding now is not the way, just from what I've learned with Claude and all these new models and so forth. If I just started grinding and I didn't see like where I can put my things together, it can go really badly. So the ability to think, to philosophy, to seduction, to many other things, I believe that has more key to elevate you than just grinding harder. Imagine if I told a salesperson that the only way to make more money is more calls. Okay, yeah, you got to make your calls. But I use the worst sales script and expect that I'm going to get higher output. The calls are not the issue any longer. It's the script that we're using to get there. And if we have a better script that takes down the numbers of calls to that, let's say instead of 50 calls to 1, it's now like 5 or 8 to 1 closing rate. That's what we want to try to do. We want to get the skills to implement so it makes it seamless, without desperation, without all this nonsense out there, and just get to the things that actually matter. To get focused on the parts that are aligning with our mission and keep it uniquely us. Because we have to offer something different. I mean, you can offer something that's in the likeness of somebody else, but look at it long term. Are you going to be able to differentiate yourself if your product's the same as everybody else's? No. Now, you can make money in it, and if you know the data and statistics and can outbeat everybody else, that's a whole different game entirely. What I'm trying to say is if you're playing by the same playbook as everybody else, you're going to falter behind. You got to know where the risk is and have the waters to yourself and understand pretty much flood in with this new idea, it starts booming, then it crashes, and then it gets bought up on pennies on the dollar. Understand these types of cycles, know where to position yourself with rational optimism, not hopium. That's one thing I hate the most. When people get way too much hope and they don't look at like where there's times for emotion and then there's times for logic. You have to blend the two to see where the direction of the water is going. Step back. Give yourself a gap in between. It doesn't have to be years. It can be 15 seconds, a minute or two. It can be sometimes days. Decide what is best, but if you can keep the speed, try to make it in that like minute or 15 seconds. Don't just act in 1 second or 3 seconds, unless it's like do or die type of way. And go from there. So I'm signing off here. Deuces, and I'll see you later.